and then effectively you go bigger. I mean, completely changing tack. It's very similar to how Graham built, the fishing site. He started off with 6 weekly deals. It was limited for that week, and then they bought them. It's the same with clothing. Like, you can do it for 2-week runs, and this is what we got for these 2 weeks. You can talk about them. You can say that's going to happen, and then it comes in. I mean, Zara built the clothes shop around that model. Every time you go into Zara each week, you're going to see different stuff because they are short runs, completely reacting very quickly to what people are buying, and everybody knows it's going to be different. Whereas if you go into other clothing stores, if you go into, I don't know whether it's still the case, like Burton Menswear or John Lewis clothing, you probably buy the same shoes all year round. It's the same products that are there. It's not really getting people. It's not the launch model. It's different. Hi Ian, how are you?
Good afternoon. I'm okay.
Yeah.
9 o'clock in the UK PM. And what time is it in New Zealand?
Well, it's just almost 10 o'clock in the morning, so we've obviously been banging on about all sorts of stuff for a long time. We usually record it a little bit earlier than this, but we'll get a topic done. You get off to bed, get up in the morning, do it all again.
Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah.
Another day in e-commerce.
Well, I think we're going through the dominoes. For those who didn't listen to the dominoes, we did 6 podcasts on each domino, going through which each domino of an e-commerce sale. And we've been going through the past couple of weeks, a couple of case studies of businesses we've used those dominoes with to grow the sales and gone through it. And we did, I think we did car parts, menswear, we've done cosmetics. And today we're going to kind of do a bridge between women's clothing and home decor. 2 areas we've actually done a lot in both. And I think it's weird, like, you tend to, I think early in our careers, we got kind of known for 2 things. This was like 10 years ago. One was automotive afterpart market. The other one was home decor. They don't really sit that well together. But because, you had early successes in one of them, then you got loads of customers from doing the other one. And so, but they're very different markets, but very big markets, and they can scale quite high. So we're going to go through a couple of case studies, women's clothing, maybe we'll bring in some home decor into it as well. But let's start with the first domino. So do you want to add anything before we start, Ian, about what the first domino is, or what you're thinking?
You can remember the first, if you, I can remember the first domino. Can you remember the first domino?
Well, it's written at the top. It says busy restaurant test. There you go.
Yeah, passing the busy restaurant test, which is all about positioning, which in women's clothing, it's actually before they've even got to the website. So it's really, it tends to be on Instagram or Pinterest or paid social, essentially. It doesn't have to be Instagram, but Meta, basically, because it's really a branding play, because it's very difficult to go into Google Shopping and bid on red dress and expect that somehow you're going to get customers. You really need people to be Googling your brand. And so in order to grow a brand, it's quite difficult to do that in Google. Yeah. It tends to be
both these models for women's clothing, home decor, tend to be Facebook ads with Google ads to mop it up. But then during the busy times, you can actually do Google ads as well. So the busy times for home decor is kind of October, November, December, when you do your massive months. During those months, you can really turn up and do other channons. Whereas outside of that, you can only really do Facebook.
Just want to clarify as well that the reason we're saying home decor, because we think, I don't know if you mentioned this before, might have drifted off, but selling women's clothing online is quite similar to selling home decor in terms of the way we approach it, if that makes sense. I mean, there are crossovers. And I think because emotionally and psychologically, it's a similar place. It's a similar process that we go through, because it's a desirability play, fundamentally, isn't it? It's not. It tends not to be a problem-solving, rational purchase. It's much more of a desirability.
They're energy raisers, aren't they? So people are looking to buy clothing, all the things for the house, to raise their energy, to make them feel more optimistic about their lives and kind of make everybody feel better. It's a humanistic purchase. And so it kind of ties into itself. And I think both these businesses are, you're building a community around the business. And in terms of the busy restaurant test, you're proving that ultimately the community that they would want to be part of. So you can't
Well, I
start
think
community building
I'll just say,
until.
sorry, can I just back up a minute? And I totally interrupted you there, but I think what you just said is just to re-emphasize that point. The busy restaurant test, the positioning is for women's clothing, and it's not just women's clothing; it's parts of men's clothing as well. But we're talking about women's clothing here. You are trying to sell stepping into a lifestyle. That's really what you're trying to sell, which is what you said before. It's it's a lifestyle. It's a life. What did you say? A life booster.
Energy raiser. It's an energy
An
raiser.
energy
Trying to raise
raiser.
it.
But
Yeah.
and so the overall positioning is by buying that particular women's clothing fashion brand, I am going to step into that life. I'm going to be part of that life. And then, taking an extreme example, take something like the White Company. We used to talk about the White Company all the time, and the White Company is a lovely branded store selling homeware really. And they wouldn't take a picture of just a table. It would be like an outdoor table. It would have the whole family would be around, and maybe there's a barbecue and the grandkids and the grandparents and the parents are all there, all having a lovely time. You're happy as Larry. And what they're selling is the lifestyle. So by buying that White Company tablecloth or the cutlery, that you're buying into part of that life. So it's symbolizing much more than the thing. You're stepping into that. I want that life. I want that, and that's
Well,
the
it reminds
positioning,
me
isn't
of
it?
the picture on Naked Wines, where you've got a picture of the whole family
Yeah.
enjoying wine with a kind of like French countryside behind, and they're doing it, and that's the picture they sell of people drinking wine in that way. They're not having a picture of someone having a bottle of wine in their bedroom on their own. It's the product is being consumed, but it's how people want to consume it that they want. They want it to raise their energy rather than lower their energy, and that's what we're selling. We're selling the energy raiser. So a lot of these businesses that have been founded recently are kind of founder-led businesses, because a lot of the time people go, well, I want to be like that person, or I want to have her house, or I want to have her energy. So like we work with a couple of people who are doing the clothing businesses in America and Australia actually, who they were basically trying on the clothes, showing the clothes, and people wanted to be as happy as that person, and they wanted to have that energy, and that person then attracted other people like them. So whenever you're putting yourself out there, you're going to attract people similar age to yourself, similar demographic. So if you are the same demographic as what you're trying to attract, then that's good. But if you're not, then that becomes harder. But it's like a busy restaurant test is you're effectively saying, if there's a little bit of buzz going on here, there's a little bit of buzz happening around this brand, do you want to be part of it? And you've got to prove that there's that buzz. So
in a practical
throwing
sense,
over to you, how would you do it?
Well, I was just about to throw that to you.
Yeah.
I think what
I
happened
can
then
see
is,
it.
Mark,
Feel it coming.
I think what happened is that you realised that you was talking about something and you thought, you know what, I'm come to the end of this sentence and I don't know how to finish it.
Trying to bring you in.
Ian.
I was trying to
Well, I
bring you in.
appreciate that. I was going to bring myself in by asking you a question, but because what I was going to say is practically. Well, I'll answer it. I'll try, and you can go. But so practically, I was saying, well, how do you create that buzz and that sense of stepping into the part of that lifestyle? And I would say it make or break is the imagery. I think the imagery it starts there, and you have to convey. So, for example, if you were selling some women's clothing, a dress, for example, what you wouldn't do is just plonk the dress on a white background. You're actually trying to lead with, and there's a time and a place for those shots certainly. But in terms of your Instagram, your meta, your initial touch point where you're trying to get that positioning across, you've really got to go for much more lifestyle, stepping into that world.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's the same kind of busy restaurant test we talked about before. I mean, ultimately, it's about, if you say you've got all your social media and you've got all your different channels and you're doing things and it's diluted and you send it to the email list and you can say, oh, you can look at this here and you can look at this here. Like, let's say you've only got a certain amount of following. You really want to focus it somewhere because you want other people to come. So let's say the founder of the business is Mary and she's got certain clothes for that month and she's trying them on and doing videos, trying on, saying what she's got on, right? If those videos are spread across hundreds of channels and she's getting a little comment here and a little mention there and a little share here, that's difficult because it's like, well, it's just one person there. Whereas she focuses on one channel, like maybe Instagram, for example, and puts all her existing customers through that channel, say, here's the video I've recorded here. And then on that video, she's got loads of likes and shares and comments saying, I've got mine and I've bought mine and I'm going to wear this to the gala and all that kind of stuff. When you put other people coming to that, they go, oh, there's a buzz here. These clothes that are on offer are interesting. I'm going to lean in and have a look at this. So it's about creating that, like if you've got a busy restaurant, like going back to the restaurant analogy, and it's a small restaurant because it's got 10 tables and it's got 10 full tables, and you take the same amount of people and you put them into a massive restaurant, like it's going to look empty. So you've got to be careful, how you dilute your initial following to kind of focus it down and only expand once you can kind of create that busy restaurant test elsewhere. Otherwise, you're going to lose it.
It's so true. So it's about getting the look right, isn't it? Because I think a lot of the times when you're a fashion brand, there will be certain looks and styles that will be, some of them will be trending, some of them will come and go. There'll be some ones that are kind of, there for a certain period of time. And it's the same thing with homewares, isn't it? There's often certain things that trend. It's a certain type of look, isn't it? That people want that look. And I think, sometimes, for homewares, it was like, I want the Scandinavian look, or I want the industrial look. And I think for fashion, it's the same. They want this. There's a certain look, isn't it, that you're trying to portray. And I think that's the thing you got to get right. And that's basically what you were saying there. If you've got a massive
take
restaurant,
back to the beginning of homeware and e-commerce in the UK. Everybody used to buy from a place called Coach House. Is that Manchester? Coach House in Manchester.
Well, they would only do. It was not far. Yeah, north.
Yeah, north. And everybody would buy the same products from Coach House. Coach House wouldn't sell direct to consumer, would only sell to wholesale. And everybody was selling the same products. And we probably worked with 5, 6 people, different people who bought from Coach House. And we could see exactly who was winning and who was doing well. It was the customer who took the stuff from Coach House and did better photography. And they were able to sell the same product for a higher price because they created the lifestyle around it. And it was, back then, it was as simple as that. These days, that business has kind of come and gone. That people are trying to do the same thing, but it's harder. It's harder to kind of like just upscale the photography and win. But that's where the market was. And really, that business, was doing about 5 million when they came to us. I think they tried to get to 10 million. They did it in a couple of years. It was just kind of like rinse and repeat on that process. It was just having better photography than everybody else,
and then it
positioning
was about
things in the right
getting
way.
the average order value up. That was it.
Yeah.
It was just an average order value play.
It comes down to, first of all, is this a restaurant I want to, it's busy restaurant, great, but is it a restaurant I want to eat at? Like, is it my type of restaurant? Like, is that person like me? Do they look like me? Are they a similar age to me? Am I going to feel, is that the house?
So
if you go
I'm going to ask you again, sorry, the question that I wanted to ask you before. So from a practical perspective, we're saying that you have to start the busy restaurant test for women's clothing in Instagram for, a paid social channel. You've got to start it there. So what are we talking? Are we talking, an Instagram homepage? What are we talking? A meta ad campaign with community around it, a Facebook group, which we've seen some fashion brands do. So what, practically,
I think
if you are now a women's clothing business in the UK, what would you do? Where would you go? What would your go-to?
I think you're very careful not to dilute too quickly. So you would probably want to create some fake scarcity in the business somehow with a short product runs. So let's say you launched a new handbag.
So when you say fake scarcity, I think you're saying limited edition pieces.
Limited supply, limited edition pieces. Yeah. So you might go and say, right, for the next 2 weeks, we're only going to make these handbags or this handbag, right? And for the next 2 weeks, you can do this, and this is what we're going to do. And you build a launch model around it. And then 2 weeks after, you do something else, you do something else. You get known for that. You do it around a very small product range so effectively people know that they need to move during that week or they're not going to get it. And effectively, you kind of keep the numbers low. You create, it's not really fake scarcity a lot of the time because you haven't got the money to put into the stock, to buy the stock, to make the stock stuff. So it's kind of effectively real scarcity. And you build a little bit of a launch model following around that. And then effectively you go bigger. Completely changing tack. It's very similar to how Graham built the fishing site. He started off with 6 weekly deals. It was limited for that week and then they bought them. It's the same with clothing. Like you can do it for 2-week runs. And this is what we got for these 2 weeks. You can talk about them. You can say that's going to happen. And then it comes in. Zara built the clothes shop around that model. Every time you go into Zara each week, you're going to see different stuff because they are short runs, completely reacting very quickly to what people are buying. And everybody knows it's going to be different. Whereas if you go into other clothing stores, if you go into, I don't know whether it's still the case, like Burton menswear or John Lewis clothing, you probably buy the same shoes all year round. It's the same products that are there. It's not really getting people. It's not the launch model. It's different.
Well, look at ASOS as an example, because ASOS stands for as seen on screen, doesn't it? That's what it stands for. Yeah, it stands for as. I did have to just Google that. because I couldn't remember what the last S was. I knew it was as seen on, but I was like, what is the S?
Yeah.
Screen? It's as seen on screen. So they were, that effectively, you're stepping into that life, isn't it? You know, they were taking certain clothing that was seen on movies and certain TV programs, and they were essentially mimicking the style. And you are essentially, you know,
You've
by
seen this
buying
style.
these clothing, you are stepping into this world. You're going to be a little bit like, you know, Kate Moss in this TV, whatever, wherever she was seen. And so I think just taking a step back, it's about getting the look right, and it's about portraying that you were, you know, by buying into these products, you're stepping into the lifestyle. But in terms of like the dominoes, just coming back to the domino, in order to find out what the busy restaurant test is, you do have to look at the third and fourth domino, which is the job to be done and the anxiety. Because that helps you set the whole, because it's really about the third domino, which is the job to be done. So for women's clothing, you wouldn't lead with the anxiety reducing. If it's your own brand, you know, if it's other people's brands, throw what Mark and I are saying out the window, because it's all about
because they're already
price,
convinced.
Yeah. So if you're selling other people's brands, it's about price, availability, and trust. Why buy from you? But if it's your own brand that you're creating, then you have to demonstrate overwhelmingly one thing: it's desirability. You know, so you know you cannot sell a beautiful dress that you're going to wear at the races on a free returns policy. They have to want the product in the first place. They have to love it, really love it. And in order to make them love it, you have to position the product in a way that makes them feel like that by buying this product, you're going to step into that wonderful experience and your life is going to be enriched. And that's why
it's a story behind it as well. Yeah, it's a story behind it. So like, let's say you went to, used to go to Garsington Opera. You used to go to Garsington Opera and there was a pashmina stall there and you got pashminas and people bought them because they were only at Garsington Opera once a year. So you had to buy there and there or not get them. But if it's a physical store, if they did like a 2-week run of, you know, different beautiful pashmina shawls from different places in Pakistan or India, and they brought them in and once they sold them, that was it. You would know when you went in that if you wanted that designer from India and you wanted to buy something from that designer and they were only going to be for those 2 weeks, it starts making it much more interesting as a purchase, because you go, gosh, I love this designer. They're only here for these 2 weeks. They're only going to be run here. And therefore, the story is they bring in short runs from these beautiful artisans. I better make a decision on it right now rather than later. And if that's kind of how it works, because effectively,
I think
the
what
next
you're saying
domino,
is you can't. I think, sorry, you've gone right to the last domino. Like you're talking about the scarcity. Like you've missed the entire, because again, nobody cares. Sorry to just jump in here, Mark, but nobody cares about limited edition scarcity if you haven't got the desirability domino right, which is all about the job to be done. So you have to focus there. So in terms of, you know, telling people where to go, what would we do? You know, that's like saying put an offer architecture of 50% off when you haven't demonstrated trust and credibility.
It kind of is. It's just that the next one is the navigational flow. And if you look at any of these stores, which obviously we have a lot, their biggest page is always new in. It's always new in. Right. So effectively, for the people who are on the store looking around and they've just landed on a product, you want to get them to new in, and then you want to tell a story about new in. Like, it's not just like, oh, new in. It's like, it's new in this week and it's new in and these are short runs.
Yeah.
And that's when
and if you
the
look at the
navigation
biggest
flow
fashion brands,
works.
Sorry to interrupt. If you look at the biggest fashion brands, you know, particularly for women, it's all about, this is the new collection. These are the new campaigns that we're running. Look at it, you know, look at ones like House of CB. You know, it's all about what's just
It's all
dropped,
about new.
the new collection.
Yeah, it's all about
all
new.
about
I mean,
newness.
that's what the whole fashion. I mean, think of that, the top fashion. It's like all those fashion shows. It's all about what's new this season, what's new coming in. And that's what people always want to see. And, you know, why it's new, what it's doing. And then, of course, you layer it with the next domino, which is a job to be done. So like, I'm looking at new things, but I'm going to a wedding, or I want to get something for going out on a night out. I'm going traveling, or I want a new skirt or dress or something like that. And so effectively, then you take them to what is relevant for them. So basically, it's new, it's fashionable, it's trendy, it's what you want to be. Now let's match that up with a job to be done, which is actually something practical in your life you want to do. Having said that, you do get the spontaneous buyer who buys stuff because they enjoy just buying stuff. Our grandmother was a bit like that. His mother, who's sitting over there, she would buy stuff because she enjoyed the experience. She maybe had slightly too many clothes, slightly too many mink coats. Who could say, you know, how many mink coats you would need to wear in the 60s? But, you know, it was the experience. She enjoyed the experience of shopping. Not necessarily, and she obviously liked dressing up and them stuff, but it was like going into a store, finding something new, buying it, coming home with it and experiencing it, and the whole like day out kind of feel to it. And that's what you've got to recreate online, isn't it? Being part of something, owning something, the dopamine rush from getting something. And it's about lifting your energy.
It is. It's by like just to go back that, you know, some e-commerce industry, we would lean more into the fourth domino, which is the anxiety reducing. So, you know, like the 60-day returns, no trouble returns. Now they're important for clothing because obviously one of the biggest anxieties is, will it fit? Well, how much if it doesn't fit? That's a huge one. But nobody will buy if it's just because, you know, I can return it. You know, they have to fall in love with it first. So you have to get that positioning right. And it's really about what other people are saying about it and seeing that product being worn. And because I think generally you can say, well, I can wear that dress for the races, for the races, or I can wear it for the wedding. You know, you could start to think about how, you know, well, what all the different scenarios that you could use it for, and then it starts to become more exciting. But it's definitely tapping into that.
Yeah, and it's very important, like to the navigational flow at that point, to capture the email address. And we were just looking at a couple of reports earlier, and we've started to automate it from Klaviyo and see how many of the data capture rate is. And, you know, like on our demo store, like it's about 12 data capture rate, and on another store we're working with, it's like 2%. And it's because we've taken our eye off the ball, off the ball. Yeah. And we've just kind of not been looking at it, and it's like it's gone down to 2.5%, and you go, well, that's going to have a massive impact on your sales. And effectively, for these kind of businesses, they kind of like need to be around the business for a while before they trust it and see it and want to be part of it.
Well, sometimes, particularly if the average order value is high, you know, we've got a women's clothing brand at the moment in the UK that's doing about 5 million, and you know, its average order value of about £300. And if we don't get the email address, we just don't get the sale. Like they just don't. They land on the site. They just do not buy in the first, second, or even third visit. You know, it takes like 15 times before that. And if you look at the touch report in the attribution, you go, you know, it's got like email, or paid social, email, direct, SEO, email, direct. Like it's the touch and email all the time. So without the email, you know, it would be very, very expensive because you'd just be reliant upon paid channels coming in. So if you put the email in, you get another bite of the cherry. So, for example, if you was a women's clothing business, and if I was running a homeware store as well, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. If I'm doing any influencer program, you know, any content creation through like Instagram content creators or in TikTok, I would be doing only things that got the email. So I'd have, you know, they could do a nice post on Instagram, you know, talking through the product, you know, the handbags or the products that they're wearing, or, you know, the homewares that they've got, beautiful kitchen, whatever it is. And I'd be doing a / name of content, and I'd be getting the content creator to promote that URL. And on that URL is an email capture in return for a 20% off or a 25% off or something, because I want the email. Because if I don't get the email, I just get a flash in the pan. You know, I get a great big hit of visits, and then nothing. I mean, we know this because there was an American brand selling rugs, and they had a Paris Hilton, I think it was, that got picked up. And she did a post, she did a story on Instagram, and she went, "Oh, I love your products, they're amazing." And honestly,
and they were sitting back thinking, the sales are just going to roll in.
Thought they'd made it. You know, literally, it was like a defining. And it was very exciting. You know, it is an amazing, exciting thing. You know, their brand got picked up by, you know, one of the biggest, you know, celebrities in the world, and they were like, thought this was going to lead to, you know, everything. And it was, you know, it did open some doors, but when you look at the traffic, it was just like had this huge big spike, did drive the traffic, and then it just went boop, and then it was like it never happened. Like there was no sort of like building of momentum. There was nothing. It was just like one spike.
Yeah, it's very much like PR, any PR, isn't it?
Yeah. And so get the email. If you don't have a mechanism to get the email, then essentially it's like a flash in the pan. It's gone. You know, it's here one day, it's gone the next. And it's so whenever, because you do have the potential in businesses like this, you know, with women's clothing and homeware, to have these big traffic spikes where things get picked up, things get Instagrammed, and people start talking about it. But unless you have something to grab the email address, it's very difficult to monetize these natural posts that are coming. That, you know, and also you don't know when they're going to come. I mean, sometimes they just sort of happen. You know, so
and that's something we've been working with. I mean,
building an audience around you. So it's,
but like like a lot of people go out there and they'll go, well, what's our data capture rate? And data capture rate is number of sessions versus number of emails captured. So number of emails captured divided by sessions is your data capture rate. Most people on to. We've actually been working quite extensively in actually getting that number up. And it's not as simple, obviously, as just putting a pop up there, but we've actually managed to get in some cases up to about 14% data capture rate. And if you imagine that, like 2% to 14% is effectively you're capturing, maybe like, I don't know, like huge amounts more emails, a lot more, like 3%, 14% more emails. And that means and the most effective emails you can send are your abandonment emails. Those abandonment emails are going to increase by that same percentage. So it's just, you're sending out such more behavioral based emails.
Automated email flows would be, again, continuing that narrative of the positioning and stepping into that lifestyle and getting the desirability right. Very, very much. And also then giving people a reason to buy now eventually.
Yeah, and I think that then once you've done that, like a lot of these businesses, when a lot of the time the buyer is convinced they want to buy. They are convinced they want to buy, but then there's guilt that comes in. There's guilt that comes in that goes, maybe I've been buying a little bit too much clothing, or maybe I've been buying a little bit too many handbags, or not sure, like, not to be sexist, but I've seen some people say, I wonder what my husband would say. I buy it during the week so he doesn't see it, those kind of things. But then you've got to give them the rational reasons why they can go ahead with the purchase. So, with a handbag, when we're selling a handbag, the adverts that work are, look at all the places you can use this handbag. It's not like showing the handbag that can be changed into different things. It's like saying, you can use it at work, you can use it at shopping, you can use it on holiday, you can use one bag, and it's like, and people go, oh, well, that bag would actually save me a lot because I could get rid of the other bags. I wouldn't need as many bags. It's the rational reason to buy it. So that's when you've got them, they're interested in buying the product, they're fallen in love with it, they want it, and then you've got to provide the rational reasons to move forward. There's a returns policy. Like women's clothing particularly has a very high returns policy because it's way higher than men. Men are just kind of like, oh, sod it, I'll just stick it in the wardrobe. But women go, oh, it's not quite the right size, I'll return it. So got to have a good returns policy. You've got to have a rational reason to move forward. It's like, it's very versatile. You could wear this at many events. This skirt would be suitable for not just that wedding, but you could do it on holiday, you could take it on the cruise, and you could do all that kind of stuff. Those things are the things that move them over the needle. It doesn't actually matter whether they will actually use the skirt in their real life. It's their imagination that they will use it, which will justify the purchase. And that's how we all do it. Like I'm a man. You may have noticed, instead of women's clothing, I buy camping equipment. And I buy camping equipment that's really cool that I will never use. But there is a slight possibility that I might use it and go on many trips with my son. And that just give me a rational reason why I can have a new camping roll or a new sleeping bag. And
you're effectively buying it because you want to step into that. You want that lifestyle, don't you?
I want that lifestyle.
Feel
I want
like
that experience.
You are going to go on adventures with your son and do camping.
Yeah. Whether it'll actually happen is another thing. Like we
but
probably we won't go camping. We'll go to a hotel.
It's very much an emotional play, isn't it?
Yeah.
By buying into that product, you are stepping into that lifestyle, and that's what you're trying to sell. And everything about the old brand has got to embody that life that you're trying to portray.
Yeah. Well, we've gone past that. We've gone past the busy restaurant test, navigational flow, job to be done. We've done all that. Now we're giving them the rational reasons why this is going to be a great purchase. It's going to be practical. This is going to be the money saving purchase. This is going to be something you're actually going to use every day. So therefore, this is probably the most practical, most cost effective handbag you will ever buy in your life. And so you should just move forward today because of all these reasons. Yeah. So that's kind of like how it happens.
I think the example of it also for women's clothing would be, if it's a dress or a skirt, you'd be having photography of the skirt, and you could do this in Instagram, and you could pull the photo, the Instagram feed onto the product page as an example, and you could say, well, this is people wearing it at work, this is people wearing it out for a night out with their friends, this is people that are doing it at a wedding, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So and obviously you wouldn't do this and you wouldn't do this for every single product, but you'd lean into the ones that were trending, that were actually being viewed a lot more. And then I think the final domino, and obviously you have to do, the returns policy, you've got to do all those things, you've got to back it with trust and credibility, but I think of all the e-commerce businesses, the one thing, domino that you would lean into massively, like if you get this right, everything really takes care of itself, is the desirability, which is the job to be done. Like if that isn't right, they don't care about trying to find the right product. They don't care about the anxieties. They don't care about trust and credibility. They just don't want it. You have to really lean into what they want. And it's the same thing as well. I was working with an American fashion brand recently. We were talking about sustainability and how the product was made, so it was American made and it was being made in a particular way. I was like, well, that's great. That's good. And we could run that in Meta and it could be the positioning statement of the brand. But actually, from a fashion perspective, like people have got to really want it. It's got to be desirable. They've got to go, oh my God, I want to be that guy or I want to be that woman and I want part of that life because that's how I stand for. And then I think the secondary is the story around how it's made and the sustainability angle. And it's understanding what's a primary job to be done, which in my opinion is it's got to look amazing and they've got to love it and they've got to be part of that life. That to me is key. And then the secondary one is the secondary thing, which is about the sustainability angle. And so I think, but the overwhelming thing is you've got to get the positioning and job to be done right. Get that right. They don't care. Like they skip all the other dominoes. We were working with a business that was selling really high-end sunglasses. It was a boutique brand selling these incredible, sunglasses in the States. And essentially it was like the key is to get the desirability right, like to get that look right. And it was all about how the product was shot, the photography of people using it, where they were, some of them were like sailing in in the Solent, or somewhere. It was just positioned so well that they just wanted it, and they didn't give a damn whether or not it was 60-day returns policy or anything like that. And in fact, if you get the positioning right, it doesn't even matter about the reasons to buy. They just want it. So. But it's hard to do. I mean, it's really hard. You've really got to be the creative photography. It's just got to be absolutely bang on with how it feels and looks. Everything's got to be amazing. But
you niche down. Depends on, you can niche down, can't you?
You can niche down, but it also it depends. Yeah. We've seen lots of women's clothing businesses who were sort of a little bit like direct mail catalogs and who've done TV ads and and grown, and by really emulating the look, and they'll then say, oh, such and such was wearing our dress in Welcome, ITV Good Morning, or on this TV show or at the races, they'll take that, they'll pull that in, and that and obviously the more people that wear it, the more advertising they have, because really somebody who's wearing your dress or your handbag is like a walking advert. So you have to factor that in too. I think it's an interesting. I'll tell you something that's quite interesting. I always find this little story is quite interesting. We had a Swedish glasses company that we worked with. And again, it was all about the look. It wasn't necessarily the practical reality of having to be able to see better. It was about the look, because the big part of buying glasses for young people particularly, and that's possibly true, but is about the way it looks. It's a statement, isn't it? And what happened is when they looked at the sales on the map in Sweden, they'd have like this little pocket of customers, and they'd have like loads of them in this little town in the middle of Sweden, and then like nothing for like 100 miles, and then loads of them in this little town, and then again nothing around it, and then just they're like, what the hell is going on? Like, why are these little clusters of real intense sales in these little geographical areas in these towns? And essentially it was obvious really when you look back. It was that one person would buy these spectacles, these glasses, and they'd go into the town, and their friends would go, wow, where'd you get those glasses? They're really cool. And they'd say, oh, I got them from such and such. And then of course they would then go and buy them, and then of course they would then do the same thing. So you have these little pockets. So that word of mouth effect, you have to really factor that in. And you can't necessarily well,
it's interesting that. Interesting because if you've got areas where you haven't got penetration in those pockets, you go, well, these towns we haven't, and you could actually really, really lower your ROAS to get those initial sales in that area, knowing that it'll probably light a fuse in those areas. If you start seeing that, you go, well, we'll get a couple in here and a couple in there and a couple in there and a couple in there, and then hopefully that word of mouth should happen, and then you would increase the ROAS in those in those areas.
It's totally true. But going back to like the whole postmodernistic tribal belongingness. We want to belong and be accepted, don't we? And we want to be part of a community because we feel safe. And if we're not accepted and part of the community, we get thrown out of the tribe and we get eaten by a lion. So this is part of that whole human psychology of wanting to be accepted and admired. And because the more admired we are, the less likely we are to be thrown out of the tribe, aren't we? So it is certainly part of that whole
it's to be part of
psychology.
something, isn't it? And I think there's certainly like you're seeing a lot of these brands grow for women over 55 and things like that when the kids have left the home for the first time, and then suddenly going, well, gosh, and there's lots of those women getting together around certain products, around certain communities, doing things, and even meeting up, which is even though it's around an innocuous product like a pair of trousers or a handbag or something like they're actually building communities around them, and that's the opportunity for brands to kind of step into that and organize that around it and say, well, this is the kind of community we are, this is the kind of customers we are. Do you want to be part of it? You can be part of it by buying one of our products, and then you're in the family, basically. So it's more than just a purchase. It's a lifestyle, and it's a community. But then leads us on to the last domino, which is the offer, which is really, you've lit the fuse, you've built up the desire, you've built the want, you've built the email list, you've built all that potential, and then you've got to tell certain people will buy, they always do. You've got to tell that list when is the time for them to step forward. A lot of people wait to say, oh, is it okay? Is it okay? Is this a good time for me to buy? Yes, this is a good time for buy because this is the offer architecture. So you can either do what we talked about earlier in the podcast, which is the kind of the 2 weekly runs, like this is what we've got for you these next 2 weeks. And then once it's gone, and then there'll be the next 2 weeks and those kind of things.
I mean, the easiest thing to do,
yeah,
I'm sorry to say, I know what we're talking about, the scarcity one, but that's actually quite complicated in terms of having limited edition runs, because it relies upon product development and all those sort of things, doesn't it? But the easiest thing still to do is to have an offer, a percentage, or a monetary amount that ends, at a certain time.
You can tie it to
there's no
an
reason,
event.
And there's no real harm in doing that, because typically you do tend to find with clothing you have good margins. If it's your own brand, you have fantastic margins. And obviously, how much is a dress? I mean, God, who the hell knows? I mean, nobody knows how much your dress or your handbag is going to cost. You set the price, and part of the price architecture is part of the desirability to a certain extent. So
it depends on the material.
Well, it does. Well, I mean,
handbags
yes
are
and
harder
no,
because the leather in the handbags is actually quite expensive. And it's quite a complicated product.
But
to
just
create.
look at the massive variety of price points of clothing, of any women's clothing, men's clothing. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? The gap. And it's definitely not down to all of it is down to the material and the craftsmanship. A lot of it is down to the perception of setting the price. And I would say the other thing is that nobody is going to die if they don't buy your products. Like, this is not a problem-solving rational purchase. This is an emotional want. Like, they emotionally want it, but they're not going to die if they don't. Like, it's not a kind of critical problem-solving issue. Like, they want it, they emotionally want it, and they look for a rational reason to justify that emotional need. And and that little nudge, is obviously the oldest trick in the book.
But I'd also say that the offer architecture is, you built the community, you built what's going on. It's the party that the community's having. It's the event that the community's having, where everybody can get involved and to be part of the event. We're having a party, have a fancy dress party, and we're, this is what we're doing. And it's that kind of energy. And the event, the sales event, the offer is that. And it doesn't have to be money off. It can be scarcity, it can be short runs, it can be things like that. And like, if it's a short run, a lot of the time, let's say it's a 2 week run, you can say these trousers are back. Then for the 2 weeks after, by popular demand. There's ways of shaping it to talk about it. Things that don't sell, they go into the clearance section,
doesn't it? It depends on your size and what you want to try. Yeah, I mean, certainly, if you had no issues with stock, and you didn't want to go down the scarcity route, which is like limited edition pieces, then really you've got to think, well, how can I create that? You get them to buy now, and you typically over a certain time period, but you have to create that entertainment layer. And the reason we say this is because without it, your return on ad spend, because they don't buy straight away, it takes them a long time to think about buying in some cases. Without it, your conversion rate is just low. I mean, it's like on the floor. It's like, 0.5%. You can get so much window shopping, so much browsing. just having a look. And because it's part of the process, that you really do need to think about how you're ultimately going to flush them out.
And also it makes your emails stand out. Like if they've just got the email saying done this new, and it's kind of like effectively what you're looking for in your list is, the people who have jobs to be done. So if they have a job to be done, they will buy something, and you're looking for those. And a lot of the time, if they haven't got a job to be done, they'll ignore the email, with the exception of like those big buying times during the year when they expect to get good deals, new things happening, like the Black Friday, the Christmas deals, the Boxing Day deals, the long weekend, like Easter coming up. Like it's a gift. You've got these long weekends. It's like people think you're going to buy stuff.
Yeah, it's a good time to do it. There's loads of times. And I think, when we talk about the offer architecture, I mean, like we haven't just said do a discount, do a deal, but you need something, the excitement at that point to get people to justify that emotional need with a rational reason. And when we talk about, do a percentage off or a monetary value off, we are not saying that people are buying because of price. Like if they want a cheap dress, they can go to bloody George at Asda and buy a dress for £8, or whatever. If you're in America, like, go to Walmart and buy one for $10. That's not what we're saying, but we're saying that it doesn't matter what demographic. I mean, if you go to the like uber elite, very, very exclusive brands that we're talking are like, like 1% of the whole fashion market, where it's, $10,000 for a bloody dress, like then you can go down the road of having this like exclusive limited edition. Like I'm just bringing it into practice because I know you talked about scarcity before, and I think it's bloody hard when you're small and you don't have the luxury of multiple product lines coming in all the time, and you haven't got the brand to create that. And I think the better bet actually is to get as many email addresses as you possibly can from people in your store and coming from influence. I wouldn't do competitions in Facebook or anything like that, or lead gen in Facebook or anything like that. You tend to find that you have, for homeware brands and women's clothing, you tend to find you have a reasonably good natural traffic coming in, because you have a lot of browsers. Oh, that looks nice. What's that? I have a lot of people coming to have a look. Get the email addresses when they're in your store, in your shop. That's where I would go. Do and obsess over that, trying to get to 10% of your sessions, your new sessions each month, get 10% of the emails. And that really is what you then lean into with you're continuing the story of positioning. Look at all these amazing people that are wearing our clothes and talking about it and wearing it for these different occasions. And then you're hitting them with a very good time-bound, like weekend offer that would be like Easter bank holiday weekend, for example. And you'd be doing good 25, 30% off. You might actually do it in before that. I always think, if people get together at these events like Easter weekend, they get together. So you want to be hitting them like the week before or the couple of weeks before, but you're celebrating Easter with so it's, it's overall, it's about positioning, it's getting as many email addresses, building an audience around your brand. So with email, but also on Instagram followers and things like that, and using that.
Yeah.
Because your Instagram
social
follower
proof.
is also an audience around, that's key. And then you're doing, you're dropping these events that are coming in. That's either new or it's sale. Because the other thing people like to look at is they all look at new, yes, but they all look at what's in the sale. They're the two things. For homeware and women's clothing, it's all about that. What's in the sale area category and what's in the new category. That's where I'd be doing my most aggressive email capture. I'd have a full page pop-up in Klaviyo saying, if you want to find out before anyone else, the early bird, when things go into our new category, give us your email address. Same for the outlet, the sale.
That's what I do. Capture rate up.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to have to finish there because we're going to have to go. But hopefully that's given, if we're running that kind of site, it's given you a couple ideas of what you can do to scale the business. And we'll be back next week. We're going to do gifting next week, so we'll get into it. Cool. Thank you very much, Ian.
Cool.